The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly in all directions as 300 alien warships moved through the void like a swarm of deadly insects. Each vessel bore the distinctive markings of the Zephyrian Empire, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly blue metal that seemed to absorb and reflect starlight in patterns that hurt human eyes to look upon. The ships moved in perfect formation, their plasma drives leaving trails of ionized particles that sparkled like fallen stars against the cosmic darkness. Admiral Kexthol stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sovereign's Wrath, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. His reptilian features showed no emotion, but deep inside his alien mind, he felt the familiar stirring of excitement that came before an easy victory. The Zephyrian race had conquered dozens of worlds over the past 1,000 years, and each campaign had followed the same predictable pattern. First came the scouts, gathering intelligence about the target species. Then came the demands for surrender. Finally came the swift and overwhelming show of force that brought even the most stubborn species to their knees. The intelligence reports about these humans made for amusing reading. According to the scout ships that had observed them from a distance, the humans were barely out of their home system. They used primitive chemical rockets to move between planets, burning crude fossil fuels like children playing with fire. Their ships were made of simple metal alloys that any decent plasma cannon could melt in seconds. Most laughable of all, they still fought wars against each other instead of uniting under a single banner. Like any civilized species should, Commander Veltar approached the Admiral's platform, his clawed feet clicking against the polished deck plates. Like all Zephyrians, he stood nearly 8 feet tall, his scaled hide shifting between shades of green and blue depending on his mood. Right now, those scales showed the deep blue of uncertainty, something that Admiral Kexthol noted with mild irritation. "Admiral, I have completed the final review of our target assessment," Veltar said, his voice carrying the hissing undertones that mark his species. The human colony world designated Haven Prime shows a population of approximately 2 million individuals. Their orbital defenses consist of 3 small platforms armed with what appear to be kinetic weapons. No energy shields detected. No significant military presence. Kexthol nodded, his own scales shifting to the golden yellow of satisfaction. Excellent. The Galactic Council chose well when they selected this target. These humans will serve as a perfect example to any other species that might consider expanding without permission. The Galactic Council had been growing concerned about reports of human expansion. Several new colonies had been established in sectors that bordered Council space, and there were disturbing rumors about human ships appearing in systems where they had no business being. The Council's solution was simple and time-tested. Make an example of one colony, demonstrate the consequences of unauthorized expansion, and the rest of the species would fall into line quickly enough. Still, Veltar continued, his scales flickering. Toward orange, I find myself wondering if we might be overlooking something. The scout reports mention that human ships have been detected much farther from their home system than their technology should allow. Some of the readings suggest propulsion systems we do not recognize. Admiral Kexthol turned his massive head to stare at his subordinate. The gesture was deliberately intimidating, and he was pleased to see Veltar's scales shift toward the pale green of submission. Commander, you seem to be developing an unfortunate tendency toward overcaution. The scout ships observed these humans from extreme range to avoid detection. Naturally, some of their readings might be unclear or inaccurate. The bridge around them hummed with quiet efficiency as dozens of Zephyrian officers monitored their instruments and prepared for the upcoming battle. The Sovereign's Wrath was one of the most powerful ships in the Imperial fleet, armed with plasma cannons that could crack a moon in half, and protected by energy shields that had never been penetrated by enemy fire. Behind them, 299 other vessels waited for orders. their crews eager to add another victory to the Empire's long list of conquests. "Consider the facts, Commander," the Admiral continued, gesturing toward the tactical display. "These humans have been aware of our approach for several days now, yet they have made no attempt to flee or call for reinforcements. Their behavior suggests either supreme confidence or complete ignorance. Given their primitive technology, I believe we can safely assume the latter." Veltar's scales returned to their normal blue-green coloration as he accepted his superior's reasoning. "Of course, Admiral. I merely wished to ensure that we had considered all possibilities. The reputation of the Empire depends upon swift and decisive victories." The conversation was interrupted by a soft chime from the navigation station. A young officer with scales still showing the bright patterns of youth looked up from his console. With excitement, "Admiral, we are approaching the edge of the target system. Sensors are beginning to detect the human colony world and its orbital installations." Kexthul moved to the primary display, watching as the computer built a three-dimensional image of the Haven system. The star was a typical yellow dwarf, slightly smaller than the Zephyrian home star, but adequate for supporting the carbon-based life that seemed so common throughout the galaxy. 4 planets orbited the star, with the human colony established on the third world from the sun. "Interesting," the Admiral mused as more details appeared on the display. "They have chosen their world well. Abundant water, suitable atmosphere, rich mineral deposits. It will make a fine addition to the Empire once we have dealt with the current inhabitants." The tactical officer's station began displaying additional information as their sensors penetrated deeper into the system. "Admiral, I am detecting approximately 40 human vessels scattered throughout the system. Most appear to be cargo haulers or mining ships. 3 larger vessels are in orbit around the colony world, but their energy signatures are consistent with civilian stations rather than military installations." Commander Veltar studied the display with professional interest. Their orbital platforms are positioned to defend against attack from the primary approach vector. Primitive, but not entirely foolish. They understand basic defensive concepts, even if they lack the technology to implement them effectively. Admiral Kexthul felt his scales shift toward the deep gold of anticipated triumph. Everything was proceeding exactly as the intelligence reports had predicted. The humans were behaving like every other primitive species the Empire had encountered. They would put up a token resistance, realize the hopelessness of their situation, and surrender before too much damage was done to their infrastructure. "Signal the fleet," he commanded. "All ships are to assume attack formation. Primary battle group will advance on the colony world, while secondary groups move to intercept any vessels that attempt to flee the system. We will give these humans one opportunity to surrender peacefully before demonstrating the consequences of defying the Galactic Council." Throughout the bridge, officers began relaying orders to the fleet. The formation of Zephyrian ships shifted smoothly from cruise configuration to battle array, their movements coordinated with the precision that came from centuries of military tradition. Plasma cannons powered up, energy shields activated, and targeting computers began plotting firing solutions for every human vessel in the system dot as the Armada approached the inner system. Admiral Kexthul allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Soon, another species would learn to respect the power of the Galactic Council. The humans would become another footnote in the Empire's history of conquest, their colony world serving as a base for further expansion into this region of space. It would be a glorious victory, swift and decisive, exactly as the Council expected. The tactical display continued updating as they drew closer to their target, showing the positions of human vessels with clinical precision. None of the contacts showed any sign of fleeing or preparing for battle. They simply continued their routine activities, apparently unaware that their entire civilization was about to change forever. The Zephyrian fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Haven system like a plague of locusts descending upon a harvest field. Reality itself seemed to ripple and bend as hundreds of massive warships materialized from the twisted dimensions of faster-than-light travel. The lead vessels were enormous dreadnoughts, each one larger than most human space stations, their hulls bristling with weapons that could level cities. Behind them came battlecruisers and destroyers in perfect formation, their combined firepower capable of sterilizing entire worlds. Admiral Kexthul watched the tactical display with growing satisfaction as his fleet took up positions around the human colony. The formation was designed for maximum psychological impact, creating a wall of alien steel that would be visible to anyone looking up from the planet's surface. It was a tactic that had worked countless times before, striking fear into the hearts of primitive species and convincing them that resistance was futile. "Communications officer, broadcast our demands on all frequencies," the Admiral commanded. "Inform these humans that they have one standard hour to surrender unconditionally. They will disarm their orbital platforms, ground all spacecraft, and prepare to receive representatives of the Galactic Council. Any attempt at resistance will result in the complete destruction of their colony." The message went out immediately, transmitted in the broken human language that their xenolinguistics specialists had pieced together from intercepted communications. It was a crude tongue, lacking the subtle harmonics and emotional undertones that made Zephyrian speech so beautiful, but it would serve to communicate the basic facts of the situation. On Haven Prime, the colonists had been watching the skies with growing alarm since the alien ships appeared. The 300 vessels hung in space like a dark cloud, their alien design making it clear that this was no human fleet coming to visit. Emergency broadcasts filled the communication networks as colonial authorities tried to coordinate a response to humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the research vessel Meridian, studying the sensor readings with a mixture of fascination and concern. Her ship had been conducting a routine survey of the outer system when the alien fleet arrived, and now she found herself in the unique position of being humanity's first ambassador to an alien species. The responsibility weighed heavily on her shoulders as she realized that her next actions might determine the fate of 2 million colonists. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet," reported Lieutenant Danny Clark from the communications station. "It appears to be some kind of ultimatum. They're demanding our surrender and threatening to destroy the colony if we resist." Lisa felt her heart sink as she listened to the mechanical translation of the alien message. The tone was arrogant and dismissive, treating humanity like children who needed to be taught a lesson. There was no attempt at diplomacy, no recognition that humans might have rights or legitimate claims to this system. It was the voice of conquerors speaking to those they intended to enslave. "Send a response," she ordered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Inform them that we wish to establish peaceful communication and arrange negotiations between our respective governments. Tell them that Captain Lisa Hayes of the human research vessel Meridian requests permission to approach their flagship for diplomatic discussions." The Meridian began moving slowly toward the alien formation, its engines producing only enough thrust to maintain a non-threatening approach speed. Lisa hoped that by presenting herself as a single ship seeking peaceful contact, she might be able to prevent the situation from escalating into violence. The research vessel was lightly armed and posed no threat to the massive alien warships, making it an ideal choice for a diplomatic mission. On the bridge of the Sovereign's Wrath, Admiral Kexthul watched the approaching human ship with growing irritation. The vessel was small and unremarkable, its hull showing the wear patterns typical of civilian craft. Its approach was clearly non-aggressive, but the Admiral had no interest in prolonged negotiations. The Galactic Council wanted a swift demonstration of power, not a drawn-out diplomatic process. "The humans are attempting to stall for time," Commander Veltar observed. This is a common tactic among primitive species. They hope to delay our attack while sending distress calls to their homeworld. Admiral Kexthol's scales shifted toward the angry red of impatience. Then we shall demonstrate the futility of such tactics. Target the approaching vessel and prepare to fire. A show of force will convince them to abandon these delaying maneuvers. The tactical officer's claws moved across his control panel with practiced efficiency. Firing solution locked, Admiral. Plasma cannon charged and ready. Fire, the Sovereigns. Wrath unleashed a brilliant beam of superheated plasma that lanced across space toward the Meridian. The energy weapon was powerful enough to vaporize most civilian vessels instantly, turning them into expanding clouds of ionized gas. Admiral Kexthul expected to see the human ship disappear in a flash of light, sending a clear message to the colony about the consequences of defying the Empire. But the Meridian did not vaporize. Instead, the plasma beam struck the ship's hull and seemed to be absorbed by the metal itself. The surface of the vessel glowed briefly with residual heat and returned to its normal appearance. The ship continued its approach, apparently undamaged by a weapon that should have destroyed it completely. On the bridge of the Sovereign's Wrath, several officers stepped back from their stations in shock. The targeting computer confirmed that the plasma beam had struck its target directly, delivering enough energy to melt through 3 meters of standard armor plating. Yet the human vessel showed no signs of damage or even distress. "Impossible," whispered the tactical officer. "The energy readings confirm a direct hit. The human ship should be nothing but vapor." Commander Veltar studied his sensor displays with growing concern. "Admiral, I am detecting unusual properties in the human vessel's hull composition. The materials appear to be some form of adaptive armor that we have never encountered before. Our weapons had no effect whatsoever." Admiral Kexthal felt his scales shift toward the pale yellow of uncertainty for the first time in decades. The intelligence reports had described human ships as primitive constructs of basic metal alloys. Nothing in their data suggested that humans possessed defensive technology capable of resisting Zephyrian plasma weapons. Captain Lisa Hayes felt the Meridian shudder slightly as the alien weapon struck her ship. She gripped the arms of her command chair, expecting to feel the hull begin to fail under the assault. Instead, she watched her damage control displays remain stubbornly green as the ship's adaptive armor did exactly what it was designed to do. "Captain, hull integrity at 100%, reported Chief Engineer Mike Rodriguez. The plasma beam was absorbed and dispersed through the armor matrix. No structural damage detected. Lisa allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. Human shipbuilders had learned harsh lessons from their encounters with automated alien probes in other systems. Those battles had cost humanity several ships before engineers developed armor, plating that could adapt to different types of energy. Weapons. The Meridian might look like a simple research vessel, but it carried the same defensive technology as the most advanced human warships. "Continue approach," she ordered. "Signal the alien fleet again. Inform them that we interpret their weapon discharge as either a malfunction or a warning shot. Repeat our request for peaceful negotiations." The alien fleet's formation began to shift as individual ships moved to new positions. Lisa watched the tactical display with growing concern as she realized that hundreds of weapons were now trained on her small vessel. The aliens had clearly expected their first shot to destroy her ship, and their failure to do so was causing confusion in their ranks. Admiral Kexthul stared at the approaching human vessel with something approaching disbelief. In over 40 years of military service, he had never encountered a situation where his weapons had absolutely no effect on an enemy ship. The implications were staggering. If the humans possessed defensive technology this advanced, what other surprises might they be hiding? All ships "Concentrate fire on the human vessel," he commanded. "Full barrage, maximum power." Dozens of plasma beams and particle weapons converged on the meridian from every direction. The space around the human ship lit up like a miniature star, as enough energy to destroy a small moon focused on the tiny research vessel. Surely no defensive system could withstand such an overwhelming assault. But once again, the human ship emerged from the barrage apparently unharmed. Its hull glowed with absorbed energy for several seconds before returning to normal, and it continued its steady approach toward the alien fleet. On the bridge of the Meridian, Captain Hayes watched her armor systems work exactly as designed, distributing and dissipating the incoming energy across the entire hull structure. The silence that followed was broken by proximity alarms beginning to wail throughout the Zephyrian fleet. Something massive was approaching from the shadow of Haven Prime's moon, something that their sensors had somehow failed to detect until now. As the contact resolved on their displays, Admiral Kexthale felt his blood turn to ice in his veins. The shadow behind Haven Prime's moon seemed to come alive as something enormous began to emerge from the darkness. At first, it appeared to be nothing more than an irregularly shaped asteroid, but as it moved into the light of the system's star, its true nature became terrifyingly clear. The UHS Defiance was a human-heavy cruiser, and it was unlike anything the Zephyrian Empire had ever encountered in their 1,000 years of conquest. Captain Ryan Stone stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the tactical display with the calm expression of a man who had faced death many times before. He was a veteran of humanity's recent conflicts with automated alien probe swarms that had appeared in several systems, teaching humans the hard lesson that they were not alone in the universe, and that not everything out there was friendly. Those battles had forged a new generation of human warriors and engineers who understood that survival in space required both superior technology and the will to use it. "Contact analysis complete, Captain," reported Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster from the tactical station. "I count 300 alien vessels in standard battle formation. Their technology appears to be plasma-based energy weapons with defensive energy shielding. Formation patterns suggest they have never faced opposition capable of serious resistance." Captain Stone nodded grimly as he studied the alien fleet. The Defiance had been conducting routine patrol exercises in the outer system when the aliens arrived, hidden in the moon's shadow while observing their approach. The ship's advanced sensors had been monitoring alien communications for hours, and the translation computers had provided a clear picture of their intentions. These aliens had come to conquer humanity, and they expected it to be easy. The Defiance was humanity's answer to that expectation. Every meter of the ship had been designed with one purpose in mind: to fight and win against superior numbers. The hull was constructed from the latest adaptive armor composites, materials that could absorb and redistribute energy weapons while maintaining structural integrity. The ship's weapon systems represented the cutting edge of human military technology, developed through painful experience in battles against alien constructs that had taught humanity the true meaning of warfare. "Engineering, report status." Captain Stone ordered. Chief Engineer Bobby Turner's voice came through the intercom with the steady confidence of a man who knew his equipment inside and out. "All systems nominal, Captain. Armor plating is at full. Charge main batteries are loaded and ready. Point defense systems are online. We are ready for combat operations." The Defiance began to accelerate away from the moon's shadow, its massive bulk moving with surprising grace for something so large. The ship was nearly a kilometer in length, its hull bristling with weapons turrets and sensor arrays. Unlike the elegant curves of Zephyrian warships, human engineering favored function over form. Every angle and surface served a purpose, whether defensive, offensive, or tactical. On the bridge of the Sovereign's Wrath, Admiral Kexthal watched the human warship emerge with growing alarm. His sensors were providing readings that made no sense according to everything the Empire knew about human technology. The ship was accelerating at rates that should have turned its crew into paste against the bulkheads, yet it showed no signs of structural stress or loss of control. Commander Veltar explained to me how our intelligence reports failed to mention the existence of human vessels of this class, the Admiral demanded, his scales shifting toward the dark red of anger. Veltar studied his sensor displays with obvious confusion. Admiral, this ship does not match any configuration in our database. Our scouts reported that the largest human vessels were small cargo haulers with minimal armament. This warship appears to be purpose-built for combat and is utilizing technology we do not recognize. The tactical officer at his station was frantically trying to get accurate sensor readings on the approaching human vessel. Admiral, I am having difficulty maintaining target lock. The human ship is generating some form of electronic interference that is affecting our targeting computers. Additionally, its hull composition appears to be similar to the smaller vessel we were unable to damage. Admiral Keckstill felt a cold certainty settling in his chest as he began to understand the magnitude of his mistake. The humans were not the primitive species described in the intelligence reports. They were something far more dangerous, a military power that had successfully hidden their true capabilities from Zephyrian scouts. The implications were staggering and potentially catastrophic for the Empire's expansion plans. Captain Stone opened a communication channel to the alien fleet, his voice carrying across space with the authority of someone accustomed to command. Alien vessels, this is Captain Ryan Stone of the United Human Systems warship Defiance. You have attacked a human diplomatic vessel and threatened the civilian population of this system. You will power down your weapons and withdraw from human space immediately, or face the consequences of your actions. The message was transmitted in the same broken Zephyrian language that the aliens had used earlier, but Captain Stone's translators had done a much better job of capturing the nuances and emotional undertones that made the alien speech effective. The result was a communication that carried the unmistakable tone of someone who was offering a final warning before unleashing destruction. Lieutenant. Commander Foster watched her tactical displays as the alien fleet began to react to the defiances. Presence. Captain, the alien formation is shifting. They appear to be attempting to surround us while maintaining their bombardment of the Meridian. Their tactics suggest they are used to fighting opponents who cannot effectively fight back. That would explain their confidence, Captain Stone replied. They expected to face a primitive species armed with chemical rockets and metal spears. Instead, they're about to learn what happens when you threaten humanity. The Defiance continued its approach toward the alien fleet, its weapon systems beginning to power up for combat. The ship's main batteries were railguns, capable of accelerating projectiles to significant fractions of light speed, while its secondary armament consisted of plasma projectors that could burn through most known materials. Point defense systems created overlapping fields of destruction around the ship, designed to intercept incoming missiles and energy weapons. Admiral Keckstill realized that he was facing a decision that would define the rest of his career. He could order his fleet to withdraw and return to Zephyrian space with news of humanity's unexpected military capabilities, admitting failure and facing the Council's displeasure. Or he could press the attack, using his superior numbers to overwhelm the single human warship and complete his mission as ordered. All ships, engage the human vessel, he commanded. Full attack formation. We will demonstrate that numbers and experience can overcome any technological advantage. The Zephyrian fleet responded with the precision that came from centuries of military tradition. Battle cruisers moved to flanking positions, while destroyers formed screening lines to protect the larger vessels. Dreadnoughts brought their main weapons to bear on the human ship, preparing to unleash the concentrated firepower of an entire battle fleet. But as the aliens maneuvered into position, Captain Stone was already analyzing their movements with the cold calculation of someone who had spent years fighting automated opponents that never made tactical mistakes. The alien formation was elegant and probably effective against most enemies, but it had significant weaknesses that could be exploited by someone with the right weapons and the knowledge to use them properly. "Amy, do you see what they're doing?" "Wrong," he asked his tactical officer. Lieutenant Commander Foster smiled grimly as she studied the alien movements. "Yes, sir. They're bunching up their heavy units and leaving their flanks exposed. Their formation assumes that enemy weapons have limited range and accuracy. They have no idea what our railguns can do at this distance." The Defiance was still, accelerating toward the alien fleet, closing the range at a rate that should have been impossible for a ship of its size. The vessel's inertial compensation systems were working at maximum efficiency, allowing the crew to function normally despite the tremendous forces involved. It was technology that the Zephyrians had never developed, giving human ships a crucial advantage in maneuverability during combat. As the distance between the fleets continued to shrink, both sides prepared for a battle that would determine whether humanity remained free or became another conquest of the Galactic Empire. The outcome would depend not just on superior technology, but on the courage and skill of the humans who had built their ships to fight against impossible odds and win. The space between the two fleets erupted into violence as Admiral Kex-Thul gave the order that would change galactic history forever. Every weapon in the Zephyrian Armada opened fire simultaneously, creating a wall of destruction that lit up the void like a newborn star. Plasma beams, particle weapons, and energy torpedoes converged on the Defiance from dozens of directions, carrying enough firepower to reduce a small planet to molten slag. Captain Stone gripped the arms of his command chair as the ship's defensive systems engaged automatically. The Defiance disappeared into a brilliant sphere of destructive energy as alien weapons pounded its hull with the combined might of 300 warships. The bridge shook violently despite the inertial dampeners, and several console displays flickered as power circuits struggled to handle the massive energy overload. "Hull temperature rising but within acceptable limits," reported Chief Engineer Turner over the intercom. "Armor is holding. Energy absorption systems are functioning at 95% efficiency. We can take this level of punishment indefinitely." Admiral Kex-Thul watched the energy barrage with satisfaction, certain that no ship could survive such overwhelming firepower. The human vessel had vanished completely inside the concentrated plasma fire, and his tactical computers confirmed that enough energy to vaporize a small moon was being focused on the target. Surely even their mysterious defensive technology could not withstand such an assault. But as the barrage continued, and the alien ships began to cycle their weapons for the next salvo, something impossible happened. The Defiance emerged from the ball of destruction like a predator stepping out of fire. Its hull was scarred and glowing with absorbed heat, but the ship was intact and still accelerating toward the alien fleet. The sight sent waves of shock and disbelief through the Zephyrian command structure. "Impossible," whispered Commander Veltar. "No ship can absorb that much energy and survive. Their armor should have failed within seconds." Captain Stone allowed himself a grim smile as he watched his damage control displays. The ship had absorbed an incredible amount of punishment, but human engineering had proven equal to the challenge. The adaptive armor had distributed the incoming energy across the entire hull structure, while specialized heat sinks and energy converters had channeled much of it into the ship's own power systems. "Return fire," he ordered calmly. "All batteries. Target the alien dreadnoughts. Show them what human weapons can do." The Defiance spoke for the first time in anger, and the galaxy would never be the same. The ship's main railguns fired in sequence, accelerating tungsten projectiles to significant fractions of light speed The kinetic rounds crossed the distance between fleets in seconds, striking Zephyrian dreadnoughts with the force of small asteroids moving at impossible velocities. The first alien ship to be hit simply ceased to exist. The railgun projectile punched through its energy shields as if they were tissue paper, penetrated the hull from bow to stern, and exited in an explosion of vaporized metal and escaping atmosphere. The massive dreadnought broke apart in seconds, its structural integrity destroyed by a weapon that delivered more kinetic energy than most civilizations used to power their cities. Lieutenant Commander Foster worked her targeting controls with deadly precision, designating priority targets and coordinating the ship's weapon systems. Direct hit on the lead dreadnought. Target destroyed. Acquiring secondary targets. The alien fleet reeled in shock as more railgun rounds found their marks. Ship after ship disappeared in brilliant explosions, as human weapons proved their superiority over Zephyrian defensive technology. The energy shields that had protected the alien vessels for centuries were useless against kinetic projectiles moving at such incredible speeds. Admiral Kexthil watched his fleet being systematically destroyed with growing horror. How are they doing this? Our shields should stop any kinetic weapon. The tactical officer frantically studied his sensor readings. Admiral, the human projectiles are moving at velocities our shields were never designed to handle. The energy requirements to accelerate matter to such speeds should be impossible for a ship of that size. But the Defiance was just getting started. Its secondary batteries opened fire, adding plasma projectors and particle beams to the devastating barrage. Unlike the elegant energy weapons of the Zephyrians, human plasma weapons were crude and brutal, designed to burn through armor plating and destroy internal systems. They had been developed through trial and error in battles against automated opponents that showed no mercy and accepted no surrender. The alien formation began to break apart as individual ships tried to escape the withering fire. Captains who had never faced serious opposition in their entire careers found themselves helpless against an enemy that treated their most powerful weapons as minor annoyances. The psychological impact was as devastating as the physical destruction. Commander Veltar reported casualty figures with a voice that shook with disbelief. Admiral, we have lost 30 ships in the first 10 minutes of combat. The human vessel appears to be targeting our weapons and engines rather than going for immediate kills. They are systematically crippling our fleet. Captain Stone had indeed chosen his targeting strategy carefully. Rather than simply destroying every alien ship, he was demonstrating human superiority by disabling them. It was a calculated psychological tactic designed to show the aliens that humanity could have destroyed them all already, but was choosing to show restraint. Target their flagship, he ordered. Disable their main weapons, but leave them functional. I want to have a conversation with their commander. The Defiance turned its attention to the Sovereign's wrath, and Admiral Kexthul felt his world collapse around him as human weapons found their mark. His ship's main plasma cannons exploded in sequence as railgun rounds tore through the weapon nods with surgical precision. Secondary systems failed as particle beams sliced through power conduits and control circuits. Within minutes, the pride of the Zephyrian fleet had been reduced to a crippled hulk, its weapons destroyed and its engines barely functional. The ship was still intact and its crew was alive, but it was completely helpless against any further attack. Around it, the remnants of the once mighty Armada drifted in space, leaking atmosphere and reactor coolant. The human warship had fought 300 alien vessels and won decisively, suffering only minor damage in return. The Defiance continued to patrol through the wreckage of the alien fleet, its weapons tracking any ship that showed signs of attempting to repair critical systems. It was a demonstration of power that no Zephyrian would ever forget. Lieutenant Commander Foster checked her tactical displays one final time. Captain, All major alien vessels have been neutralized. No remaining threats detected. The research vessel, Meridian, reports all systems nominal and is returning to standard orbit. Captain Stone opened a communication channel to the alien flagship. When he spoke, his voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had just proven his point beyond any possible argument. Admiral Kex Thul of the Zephyrian Empire. This is Captain Ryan Stone. You came here expecting to conquer a primitive species with chemical rockets and metal spears. Instead, you have learned that humanity is quite capable of defending itself. I am prepared to discuss terms for your withdrawal from human space. Admiral Kexthul stared at his ruined bridge and considered his options. His fleet was destroyed. His mission was a failure, and he was completely at the mercy of an enemy he had grossly underestimated. The implications for the Empire were staggering. If humanity possessed military technology this advanced, then every assumption the Galactic Council had made about human capabilities was wrong. The silence stretched between the two ships as both commanders contemplated the magnitude of what had just occurred. The battle had lasted less than an hour, but its consequences would reshape the political structure of the galaxy for generations to come. Admiral Kexthul stood among the wreckage of his bridge, his scales showing the pale gray of defeat as he stared at the tactical display that told the story of his fleet's destruction. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows across the damaged command center, and the acrid smell of burned electronics filled the air. Around him, his surviving crew members worked frantically to keep their crippled ship operational, but everyone knew that their fate now rested in the hands of their human enemy. The communication from Captain Stone hung in the air like a death sentence. The human commander was offering to discuss terms for withdrawal, but the very fact that he was in a position to make such an offer demonstrated how completely the situation had reversed. Less than an hour ago, Admiral Kexthul had commanded the most powerful battle fleet in the Zephyrian Empire. Now he was a defeated commander, begging for mercy from a species he had expected to conquer easily. Commander Veltar approached the Z. Admiral's position, his own scales showing the mottled colors of shock and confusion. Admiral, damage reports are coming in from across the fleet. We have lost 73 ships completely destroyed, and another 147 are too damaged to fight. The remainder are operational, but have suffered significant weapons damage. The numbers were catastrophic, beyond anything in Zephyrian military history. No fleet had ever suffered such losses in a single engagement, especially not against a single enemy vessel. The implications for the Empire's military doctrine were staggering, but Admiral Kexthul was more concerned with the immediate problem of keeping his remaining ships and crews alive. Open a channel to the human vessel, he ordered, his voice carrying the weight of utter defeat. I will speak with their captain. Captain Stone's image appeared on the main display, and Admiral Kexthul found himself studying the face of humanity's representative. The human looked surprisingly young for someone commanding such a powerful warship, but his eyes held the steady confidence of someone who had faced death many times and emerged victorious. There was no cruelty in his expression, but also no weakness that might be exploited. Admiral Kexthul, Captain Stone said, his voice calm and professional. I trust you now understand that humanity is not the primitive species your intelligence reports described. We are prepared to allow your surviving ships to withdraw from this system, but there are conditions that must be met. The Zephyrian admiral felt his remaining pride crumble as he was forced to negotiate from a position of complete helplessness. What are your terms, Captain? Captain Stone leaned forward slightly, his expression becoming more serious. First, you will immediately cease all hostile actions against human colonies and ships. Second, you will transmit a full report of this encounter to your superiors, making it clear that humanity possesses advanced military capabilities and will defend itself against aggression. Third, any future contact between our species will be conducted through proper diplomatic channels, not military conquest. Each condition was a knife thrust into the Empire's pride and ambitions. Admiral Kexthol realized that Captain Stone was not just demanding his fleet's withdrawal, but was using this encounter to send a message to the entire Galactic Council. Humanity would not be conquered or intimidated, and any species that attempted to do so would face the consequences. "I accept your terms," Admiral Kexthol replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I must ask, how many ships like yours does humanity possess? The Galactic Council will need to know what they are facing." Captain Stone's expression remained neutral, but there was something in his eyes that sent a chill through the alien. "Commander, Admiral, the Defiance is a single ship from a single human colony. We have hundreds of worlds, each defended by vessels similar to this one or better. Humanity has been preparing for this day since we first detected alien technology in our space." The revelation hit Admiral Kexthol like a physical blow. The humans were not just technologically advanced. They were an established interstellar civilization with military capabilities that dwarfed anything the Empire had imagined. The scout reports had been catastrophically wrong, describing only the most primitive human settlements while missing the true extent of their expansion and development. Commander Veltar spoke up from his position at the communication station. "Admiral, we are receiving priority transmissions from several ships requesting permission to begin emergency repairs. Hull breaches are being sealed, but many vessels will require significant work before they can attempt hyperspace jumps." "Captain." Stone nodded understandingly. "Admiral, you may conduct necessary repairs to make your ships spaceworthy. However, any attempt to restore weapon systems will be considered an act of aggression. My ship will monitor your activities until you are ready to depart." The next several hours passed in tense silence as the surviving Zephyrian ships worked to repair critical systems under the watchful eye of the Defiance. Human engineering teams even provided assistance to several alien vessels that were in danger of losing life support, demonstrating a level of mercy that surprised the Zephyrian crews. It was not the behavior they expected from a conquering enemy. As the repairs neared completion, Admiral Kexthol found himself composing the most difficult report of his military career. How could he explain to the Galactic Council that their assumptions about humanity were completely wrong? How could he describe a species that possessed technology capable of defeating the Empire's finest ships, yet showed restraint and mercy to defeated enemies? The final message he sent to Zephyrian High Command was brief but devastating in its implications. "Council Command, this is Admiral Kexthol reporting mission failure. Human species possesses advanced military technology capable of defeating our finest ships. Intelligence reports were completely inaccurate. Humanity is an established interstellar power with defensive capabilities that exceed our offensive capacity. Recommend immediate reassessment of all expansion plans in consideration of diplomatic contact rather than military conquest. The humans are not primitives to be conquered. They are apex predators who have learned to wage war on a scale we never imagined." When the last of the alien ships finally jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Haven system in peace, Captain Stone remained on his bridge for several minutes, contemplating the magnitude of what had just occurred. Humanity's secret was out now. The galaxy would know that humans were not helpless prey, but dangerous predators capable of defending themselves against any threat. Lieutenant Commander Foster broke the silence from her tactical station. "Captain, all alien vessels have departed the system. No remaining threats detected. Colony ships are reporting normal operations." Captain Stone nodded and settled back into his command chair. "Log the encounter and transmit our report to fleet. Command, mark it as routine contact with unknown alien species. Recommend diplomatic protocols for future encounters." For Captain Stone and his crew, defeating an alien invasion fleet was indeed routine work. They had trained for such encounters since humanity first detected signs of alien technology in nearby systems. The Defiance was just one ship in a growing fleet of human warships designed to protect humanity's expanding civilization from any threat the galaxy might produce. But across the galaxy, in the council chambers of the Zephyrian Empire and beyond, the name human was already taking on new meaning. Intelligence analysts scrambled to revise their assessments. Military planners reconsidered their strategies, and politicians debated whether this new species represented an opportunity for alliance or a threat to the established order. The age of human expansion had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the depths of space, other alien civilizations intercepted fragments of the Zephyrian transmission and began to ask themselves the same question that now haunted the Galactic Council. If humanity could defeat the Empire's finest fleet with a single ship, what other surprises might they be hiding among the stars? The answer to that question would reshape the political landscape of the galaxy for generations to come. As species, after species learned that humanity was not content to remain hidden in the outer reaches of space, they were explorers, engineers, and warriors who had turned the art of survival into a science, and they were coming to claim their place among the stars, whether the established powers approved or not.